In today's episode of Getting to Hired, project management. Why is that important to you? We're about to find out. Coming right up. Hi there. Welcome to Getting to Hired. My name is Tony Morrow, and this is the show that is helping you as a member or a retired member, as a veteran, transition into your successful civilian career. Today, I am joined by Larry Stieler, who is a program manager, a veteran, retired major, and project manager at Vets2PM Canada. Larry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tony.
So, most of us don't necessarily understand what project management is or who Vets2PM are. It's probably the first time many of us have heard that name. Can you maybe tell us a little bit of who Vets2PM is and what they do?
Vets2PM is in the title is Veterans to Project Managers. And I found the company in the States. It was a company formed by veterans to help veterans. And their take was to help those people that couldn't find a job in the civilian market as project job, and they were making them into project managers. And I came across them when I got out of the military. And I was looking for a job. I was already a civilian project manager, but I didn't have the designation of PMP, which is Professional Project Manager. And I found them, and I thought they had a great program, and I brought them to Canada.
So project management, it's something I'm sure a lot of us have heard that term used, but can you maybe explain to us what project management is as far as the designation? You talked about PMP. What is that designation, and what does it signify? Project
management is a terminology that brings, when you're doing a operation or an exercise in the military, we call that in civilian life a project. In civilian life, a project is something that has to have a start and a finish to make an outcome. And a lot of people in the civilian world, they fall into it without having the proper training, and they have to get and accomplish a task, and their boss gives them a task that has to come with an outcome or achieve a decision. So they have to.
Oh, looks like we might have lost Larry there ever so briefly. Oh, hi there, Larry. We just lost you there for a sec. The connection broke out. Can you just recap the last 2 seconds of what you were saying about the tasking that we do in the military and how that translates into a civilian project?
Tasking in the military, we have to plan it, execute it, and at the end, we have to write up what we've done to make sure it's captured. Same thing happens in a civilian life.
So really, it sounds like a lot. Essentially, if you are familiar with small party tasking, SMESC format, operational planning process, or if you're familiar with the term MIP, it sounds like any one of those things. If that's a piece of terminology that you're familiar with in your military career, project management applies to you. But why is project management, the PMP designation, how is that valuable for either military members that are currently serving or for a veteran who is in the midst of transitioning into a civilian career?
PMI has come up with the best practices for doing a project. In the military, we don't have that proper training, so we are not familiar with the best practices. By learning the best practices, this makes us a better project manager while we're in the military. And when you get out of the military, you have those best practices that you can fall into the job and do a project management in the civilian world.
So so this designation, this PMP designation, very valuable, as you say, but how do we get it? How do civilians do it? But how do we as military members or as veterans, how do we acquire this designation?
Well, Vets2PM Canada is running a 5-day classes, and then after the 5 days of translating your skill sets from the military and giving you extra information so you can read the project management body of knowledge guide, you then can study online classes, and you can also talk to our staff. And when you're ready and you feel that you're confident by answering tests or sample test questions that we provide you with, Then you can challenge the test provided by Project Management Institute. And once you've passed that test, you're then qualified or get your PMP designation.
So PMI, the Management Institute, they have a curriculum, an exam that you have to write. Is there anything that you need to, for example, like do you have to accumulate hours or some kind of pre-designated qualification before you can sit the exam?
Yes, if you have a degree, there's 3,500 hours of project management that you have to have. If you don't have a degree, you have to do 7,500 hours of projects. So with our founder, Eric Wright, he developed a software called VETS2PM, which helps you put your project management hours together through the proper wording that PMI accepts to qualify to write the exam.
So terminology, very important, as you just identified. But like when you say the number of hours, 3,500 or 7,500 hours, to be able to kind of qualify to sit this exam, it sounds like a very intimidating number. But as you say, this software suite that Vets2PM has called VETS2PM, if you sit down and go through this software package, it will help you identify and quantify the hours you've already spent in your career doing or accumulating these hours in advance. So essentially, it's not that you're doing any more extra work over and above what you normally do day to day, but rather you're just documenting stuff that you've already done to be able to meet the threshold, the 3,500 or 7,500 respectively, number of hours to be able to sit this exam. Is that correct?
That's correct, Tony.
So Vets2PM offers this assistance, but why, or I guess how is it any different from a civilian doing this process on their own? I mean, if you were a civvy on the street and you were just trying to get this qualification, how does this Vets2PM program that's offered to military members and of course to veterans transitioning, how does this provide added value or help us kind of be more successful in this process?
Well, the difference is when you come on the 5 days of training with us, it's taught by veterans so they can relate to what you do. And it's also in a classroom full of veterans, so they also relate. You have a combined team of people that are together that have like mind, and you can relate to them. And there's the translation of your terminology that you've been using throughout your military career that's not the same terminology that civilian program managers use. So the people that are on a civilian course, they recognize the terminologies that are in the PMBOK, and you're not going to understand the terminology in the PMBOK. So we're helping you understand those terminologies by doing the translation so that you can read the PMBOK and then apply those principles and terminologies to get yourself so you're ready to write that exam.
Now, terminology, as we've kind of harped on many times here, very important. And you mentioned a term there, the PMBOK. Can you explain what that is?
That's the Program Management Body of Knowledge. It's basically the Bible for program management. Although there are some stuff in the course that we do add to the learning process that's not in the PMBOK. They've just come out with the 6th edition of the PMBOK because PMI is constantly upgrading the best practices through lessons learned that we do in the military as lessons learned, but they also do it in civilian practices so that we keep up on the best practices and learn from our mistakes.
So the Vets2PM offers, again, this 5-day kind of boot camp, we'll call it, that we run through that has a curriculum of material that helps us as military members or recent military members kind of navigate the terminology from where we are now, living in the military bubble, using that bank of terminology, and to learn the terminology of the civilian world. Like you say, civilian program managers or project managers, rather, they use a different series of terminology. So we learn how to describe or use that language. And then there's amplifying information in that course material that helps us prepare and be more successful when it comes time to write the exam. Is that at the end of the 5 days, are you essentially ready to write the exam and then essentially get your qualification?
I wouldn't say so, Tony. I would say that you're going to need to study on the average. Most people would take a little longer Our founder says 6 weeks. If you're really good at it, you can do it in 6 weeks. But I would say that most people could write it in 2 to 3 months. Would give themselves 2 to 3 months studying the material and getting through, because everybody's working. For the most guys that are still in serving, they would be still working, doing their job, so they'd have to study. Guys that are now retired and not working, maybe a little faster because they could concentrate on looking at the material more often than the guys that are not, or that are not still serving. So maybe 2 months would be the average time for a guy before he's ready to challenge the exam. But you can challenge that at your own time.
And as we just identified, so we have military members and retired members who are potentially eligible to take this program. But there's a significant value added for veterans who take this program. Again, assisting those transitioning from the military to civilian side of things. There's a lot of amplifying services and support that Vets2PM offers that makes or helps veterans be more successful in, finding a position or being successfully getting a job in project management once they've completed the exam and done this course. What are some of the things that Vets2PM does to help veterans kind of bridge that gap?
That's a great question, Tony. Well, when we get our people into the course, or classes we call them, after the classes are done, we have a team that rewrites your resume. Instead of having a long 5-6 page resume, we get it down to a 2-page resume that jumps off the page. It's written in a civilian speaking language for the civilian employer that's going to read it. It's not talking about your exercises or your basic military qualification or anything like that. It talks in a language that the employer recognizes and appreciates, so that they can read it and see the qualifications that you have, and it equates to what they're looking for in the civilian world. We also offer a 4-hour class on how to sit through an interview, what to say, and speak the language that the civilian employer speaks, and how to basically behave in that interview, because most of these guys have never had another civilian job before, and they need to understand what the civilian employer is going to be looking at and what kind of questions are going to be asked. And we also offer them 2 one-on-one interviews, so that they can have a person sitting there and practice doing an interview. After they do that, we offer them, and no other people offer this, lifetime assistance in finding a career as a project manager. They're put into our, let's just call it a bank of people that have the PMP, and even if they don't have their PMP, we put them in there, and we link up with a bunch of strategic alliance partners to help us find them positions as project managers or project coordinators or other things along that line that are related to projects. And we help them find these positions, second careers, basically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're a kind of a success story of this yourself, in the sense that you're retired and you are a qualified PMP project manager. And how have you found the experience? I mean, obviously you work closely with Vets2PM. I mean, you're here on behalf of Vets2PM talking about Vets2PM Canada. But how have you found in your time working with Vets2PM the kind of similarities between civilian project management and the military career that you had? Because I think for many of us, drawing that, I mean, it's we can use the terminology. We can talk about project management. We can say, yes, we do project management type activities in the military, but as a functional day-to-day living the job or the role, how is it different, if it is, between what you did in the military and what you're doing in your civilian career now?
Well, my civilian career now is the program manager for Vets2PM. And I get up every day. I'm excited about the challenge because I want to help veterans out. I see a lot of opportunities out there for people that as project managers. And I'm excited about getting those people lined up for our project managers that are coming through the program. as when in the army that I was in, I was logistics officer, and I managed projects every day. The only difference is I'm not managing army trucks or weapons so much. I'm now managing personnel, which I was doing in the military also. But there is a lot of exciting jobs out there right now. Maybe not branded as military, but there is a lot of exciting opportunities for the veteran out there. It's just that the employers have to recognize the quality that they're going to get by hiring a veteran.
It seems like, so when you describe that, I hear that essentially your civilian work, although different in the sense that, like you say, you're not managing trucks and supply for ammunition and weapons, but a lot of the same types of activities that you're doing, that you did in your military career, you're doing in your civilian career now. So as far as those watching, the translation or the difference in experience, or the experience, I should say, in doing the job of a project manager versus what you're doing in the military now, probably not as much difference as you might think there is. Very similar in the sense that you're managing.
No, same job.
Yeah. So, so essentially, by taking the Vets2PM course, the boot camp, and then working towards getting this PMP designation, and then working towards getting a job in this field in the civilian world, which Vets2PM will assist you in doing, it's essentially taking a similar experience, something you're well practiced at, something you know how to do, and then taking that with a recognized designation, and then being able to do that in a civilian workplace in, like you say, your second career.
Absolutely. The PMP is that recognition. When the civilian employer sees the PMP on your resume, they recognize that, okay, you know what you're talking about, and there's no question. Without that PMP, you can't say that. They can see that you have lots of experience, but they say, well, it's not the same, because they can't do that translation in their head. But with the PMP, that translation is done for them. They recognize it and they move on.
And that was one thing you mentioned earlier that that's of real value to us. I know when I first left and I was writing up my resume, one of the first things someone else told me when they looked at it, they said, well, what is all this stuff? Because I'm using military jargon to describe the jobs that I've had. And so to be able to have Vets2PM coach you and assist you and help you write that 2-page punchy resume that, as you said, will jump off the page and use terminology that civilians, that is, understand and appreciate, to describe the jobs and the value that you bring to any position that you'll fill. That is of huge and significant value. So as far as the schedule or the calendar when it comes to these programs being offered, you have programs being offered at least between now and July. You have programs being offered in Victoria, CFB Edmonton, Winnipeg, Kingston, Ottawa, Gagetown, and St. John's. If I'm interested, if they're interested in contacting you and signing up for one of these courses or registering, how do they reach out and contact you?
They can send me an email at Larry, Larry, at Vets2PM, VETS 2PM.com. Or they can call me at 613-415-5380.
And don't worry, folks, I will put that in the notes, the show notes, if you're watching on YouTube, and in the comments below, pinned to the top if you're watching on Facebook. So again, a number of different, across the country, a number of different courses will be offered, anywhere from the earliest here is in Victoria, which is where I live, from the 7th to the 11th of May. And the latest is, according to the schedule that I have here, is in St. John's on the 9th to the 13th of July. But of course, there's going to be many more courses coming up down the, going into the fall and Christmas, or rather the winter and so on. Checking out and being in contact with you to be able to be up to speed on the latest with regards to that calendar, those courses offered, and where they're located will be key. So, Larry, is there anything else? I guess anything that I haven't asked about project management or about Vets2PM that you think is important for our community, both serving and veteran, to hear?
Well, if you have friends, please let them know about it, because I think this is a great opportunity, and I'd hate to see them miss out on it and say, well, nobody's helping the vet, because I think this is a great opportunity for them.
Absolutely. Well, Larry, thank you so much for joining us today on Getting to Hired. Everybody, as you are watching this now, if you know anybody in the military or is a veteran who this would be of benefit to, project management designation, trying to find their next career, or even just practicing the skills that they were very good at in their military occupation, then please let them know. Again, this information will be in the show notes on YouTube. It'll be in the comments on Facebook. And take a look at those. Reach out to Larry, contact Larry, and find out the latest and greatest with regards to the courses being offered and where they're located. Just to summarize for you, Victoria, 7th to 11th of May. You have Edmonton, Winnipeg, Kingston, Ottawa, Gagetown, and St. John's from then on. And St. John's will be from the 9th to 13th of July, 2018. I'll have all those dates again in the show notes and in the comments below on Facebook. This is Tony Morrow for Getting to Hired. Thanks for joining us.